When Adrian Vale arrived at Royal Crest on an old bicycle, the guests laughed before the bride could reach him. They saw dust on his suit, no driver, no limousine, and decided he was a poor courier pretending to belong. They did not know the quiet groom owned the estate beneath their polished shoes. By sunset, everyone who mocked him would need that same front gate opened for them. By 9 in the morning, Royal Crest Wedding Estate looked less like a place for vows and more like a place where people came to prove they belonged. Black cars rolled through the marble gate. Women stepped out in silk dresses. Men adjusted cufflinks beneath the glass canopy. Photographers crossed the courtyard, catching every expensive smile. Eliana Brooks stood near the garden pavilion, both hands around her bouquet. The white flowers, champagne trays, and glass roof were flawless. Still, she could feel her aunt's stare more than the sun. "Shoulders back," Marjorie Brooks whispered. "The Westons just arrived. Today is not the day to look nervous." "It's my wedding day," Eliana said. "That is exactly why you cannot afford to look uncertain." To Marjorie, this wedding was proof that the Brooks family still belonged among donors, investors, and people who measured respect by the cars waiting outside. Across the courtyard, Priscilla Grant moved with a tablet and a headset. As Royal Crest's wedding director, she checked flowers, staff, guests, and camera angles with the same sharp expression. "VIP wristbands on the west side," she told an attendant. "No staff crossing the main photo line. Keep the service corridor closed unless I approve it." Then she looked toward the driveway. "Where is the groom's car?" a few guests were already asking. The officiant waited near the arch. The musicians had taken their places. But there was no limousine, no black SUV, no driver opening a door for Adrian Vale. Then, at the far end of the drive, a small bell rang once. A waiter paused. A photographer lowered his camera. Adrian came into view. On a bicycle. It was old, dark green, worn at the handles, with a small brass bell near the right grip. Dust marked the tires. A folded jacket was strapped to the back with a leather cord. Adrian wore a simple navy suit. No driver, no entourage, no apology in his posture. He slowed at the marble gate, put one foot on the ground, and looked toward Eliana as if the laughter beginning around him had not reached his ears. Someone near the fountain chuckled first. Then a woman covered her mouth with her program. A man in a gray suit said loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "Is that the groom or the delivery guy?" The laughter spread in pieces. Eliana felt it before she counted how many people had joined in. Even 2 young staff members looked down to hide their smiles. Marjorie went pale. "No!" Adrian got off the bicycle and straightened his cuffs. He did not look ashamed. That seemed to bother them more. Priscilla crossed the courtyard with a practiced smile. "Sir," she said, polite in the way locked doors were polite, "deliveries go through the side entrance." Adrian glanced at her name badge. "I'm not making a delivery." "Then you must be lost." Eliana moved before Marjorie could stop her. She lifted the front of her dress and walked down the steps. "Adrian," she said. His face softened. "You look beautiful." A few guests laughed again, quieter this time, as if they were embarrassed for her. Marjorie reached them with her pearls trembling. She looked at the bicycle, then at Adrian's shoes, then at the dust near his cuff. "You came to Royal Crest on a bicycle?" "Yes, ma'am." "On your wedding day?" "Yes." "Do you understand what this looks like?" Adrian looked at the gate, the cameras, and the guests pretending not to listen. I understand what people are seeing. Priscilla stepped closer. Mr. Vale, we have a visual standard to maintain. The bicycle can be moved to the service area before portraits begin. Eliana turned to her. He's the groom. And we will treat him with respect, Priscilla said smoothly. But the front gate is part of the guest arrival experience. It's not equipment, Eliana said. It is not part of the wedding design. Marjorie gave a thin smile. Darling, no one is asking you to cancel anything. We are simply asking your groom to stop making your family look like a charity case. Adrian's jaw shifted, but he said nothing. Near the front wheel, a little boy in a tiny suit slipped away from his mother and reached toward the brass bell. It's shiny, he said. Before his fingers touched it, Marjorie caught his wrist. Don't touch that, she snapped. Then, when the boy's mother looked over, she softened her voice. It's dirty, sweetheart. The child stepped back. Eliana saw Adrian's hand tighten on the handlebar. Not because they had insulted him, because of how quickly they had taught a child to be ashamed of touching something old. The bell was worn smooth in places. Beneath a small double-leaf symbol, a few faint letters caught the sun. VM001. Priscilla noticed Eliana looking. Please, she said, we are already behind schedule. She signaled to an attendant. Open the service gate. Adrian looked at Eliana. For the first time since arriving, a question passed between them. I can move it, he said quietly, if that's what you want. Eliana looked at the guests, at Marjorie's fixed smile, and at Priscilla's impatient tablet. I want you to walk in through the front gate, she said. Marjorie cut in. The front gate is for guests who understand where they are. Adrian let the words settle. Then he nodded once, not in agreement, but as if he had learned something useful. He began pushing the bicycle toward the side path. Eliana started to follow, but Marjorie caught her arm. Do not make this worse, her aunt whispered. At the service gate, the attendant held a scanner near the bicycle's handlebar. The device beeped, then flashed. Founder override? The attendant blinked. Miss Grant? Priscilla turned fast enough for her headset to slip. For half a second, she stared at the screen. Then she tapped it dark. System error, she said. But it said... I said it's an error. Adrian watched her without speaking. Priscilla's smile returned, thinner now. Take the bicycle behind the delivery wall. We don't need it appearing in any photographs. Adrian rolled the bike forward. The brass bell moved with the handlebar and gave a soft, accidental ring. At the edge of the courtyard, an elderly musician with a worn violin case stopped suddenly. Mr.
Joseph Bell turned toward the sound. His eyes went to the bicycle, then to the brass bell. For a moment, the past had called his name. Adrian did not argue as Priscilla led him away from the marble gate. That bothered Eliana more than if he had raised his voice. Behind them, the laughter had thinned into whispers. Guests looked over champagne glasses. A photographer lifted his camera, then lowered it when Marjorie shot him a warning look. Portraits are in 20 minutes, Priscilla said, walking fast.
We can still save the schedule if everyone cooperates. Eliana should not have to hide her groom, Eliana said. Priscilla turned with a practiced smile. No one is hiding anyone. We are preserving the guest experience. Ahead of them, the service corridor waited in the shade. A brass sign read, Staff Access Only. Beneath it, a taped paper arrow said, Deliveries. Marjorie's voice came from behind Eliana. This is not cruelty, darling. This is damage control. Adrian stopped beside the side entrance. Damage from what? Marjorie looked at the bicycle, as if the answer were obvious. Priscilla gestured to a young attendant. Bring a linen cover, something neutral, and wipe the front wheel before it tracks dirt into the corridor. For the bike? The attendant asked. For the image, Priscilla said. A staff member near the door gave a small laugh. Did the delivery guy really turn out to be the groom? He whispered. Eliana heard it. So did Adrian. He took the white towel from the nervous attendant and wiped the front wheel himself. You don't have to do that, Eliana said.
I know. He did it anyway, not because Priscilla had ordered him to, but because the worker holding the towel looked afraid of being blamed. That was when Tessa Reed stepped into the corridor. She wore a temporary staff badge clipped crookedly to her black vest and carried a tablet tight against her ribs. When she saw Adrian's bicycle, her eyes moved first to the brass bell, then to Priscilla. Miss Grant? Tessa said. The West Garden table cards are set, and the shuttle list is... Not now. Yes, ma'am. As Tessa turned the tablet dark, Adrian caught a glimpse of a folder title on the screen. Complaint Backup. He looked away before anyone noticed. Tessa stepped closer. There's a dry storage room past the linen carts. He can place the bicycle there. It's safer than the loading wall. Priscilla gave her a slow look. Did I ask you to solve this? No, ma'am. I just thought that is usually where mistakes begin. Tessa's face went still. Eliana felt Adrian's hand brush hers. It was not a plea for silence. It was a quiet sign that he had seen something worth remembering. They moved deeper into the corridor. Staff passed with trays and folded napkins, lowering their voices whenever Priscilla came near. On the far wall, half hidden behind a rack of linens, old painted letters peeled from the plaster. No guest left outside. Eliana stopped. What is that? Priscilla did not look back. An old slogan. Royal Crest has had many campaigns. It doesn't sound like a campaign, Adrian said. It sounds outdated, Priscilla replied. This is premium season. Our clients expect a certain atmosphere. Before Adrian could answer, a raised voice came from the side gate. I was invited to play, an elderly man said. Please check again. Joseph Bell. Violin. Morning procession. The musician from the courtyard stood beyond the open service gate, holding a worn violin case. His shoes were polished, but old, creased at the toes. A security attendant blocked him with a clipboard. I don't see a VIP wristband, the attendant said. I was told to arrive early, Mr. Joseph said. Mrs. Vale's song is first. At the name, Adrian's eyes shifted, only for a breath. Priscilla stepped forward. Sir, all performers should have checked in at the vendor entrance before 8:30. I came through the front, Mr. Joseph said. I always come through the front when I play a wedding. This is not a small-town chapel, Priscilla said. We have procedures. Eliana moved to the gate. He said he's the violinist. Can't we check the list? Marjorie arrived beside her. Eliana, please, do not turn your wedding into a waiting room for every confused vendor at the gate. Mr. Joseph lowered his eyes, but he did not step back. Adrian picked up a folding chair and set it in the shade. Mr. Bell, he said, would you sit for a moment? The old musician looked surprised. Thank you. Adrian handed him a sealed water bottle from a nearby tray. Priscilla's mouth tightened. That water is for the bridal party. Then I'll replace it, Adrian said. As he turned the bicycle against the wall, the brass bell rang again, soft and clear in the narrow corridor. Mr. Joseph's hand stopped halfway to the bottle. He looked at the bell. Then he leaned forward
until the tiny engraving caught the light. VM001. His lips parted, but no words came. "You know it?" Adrian asked quietly. Mr. Joseph lifted his eyes to Adrian's face. Something passed through them. Recognition, fear, or a memory too heavy for a wedding morning. Before he could answer, Priscilla's radio crackled. "Miss Grant, 2 VIP guests are asking why the bicycle is still visible near the service gate. One mentioned the old musician." Priscilla pressed her headset. "Keep them in the pavilion. Offer champagne. I'm handling it." Marjorie turned to Eliana, her voice low and sharp. "Do you see what this is doing? One bicycle, one confused musician, and already people are laughing. Love does not pay back a family's reputation." Eliana looked at Adrian, then at Mr. Joseph, sitting quietly beside the wall. "My wedding does not need to push people out because their shoes are old," she said. "And it does not need to hide the man I'm marrying because he didn't arrive in a car you approve of." Marjorie's smile disappeared. Priscilla stared at Eliana, then looked down at her tablet. Whatever kindness had been left in her face was gone. "Fine," she said. "If everyone wants dignity, let's make sure the ceremony does not lose the one thing that actually funds it." She walked to the coordination table near the corridor entrance, where envelopes, schedules, and a leather-bound ledger had been arranged under a small sign that read, "Founder Pledge." Her hand moved across the table, then stopped. The ledger was not there. Priscilla looked at the empty space, then at Tessa. Tessa went pale. It was there 10 minutes ago. Priscilla's eyes moved next to Adrian and the bicycle beside him. Marjorie stepped closer to Eliana and whispered, loud enough for the nearest staff to hear. "People who come in through side doors often touch things that do not belong to them." Priscilla lifted her chin. "Stop the procession," she said into her headset. "No one enters the garden until we find out who took the Founder Pledge ledger." Her gaze settled on Tessa, then on Adrian. The missing space on the coordination table looked small at first, just a pale rectangle where the leather-bound Founder Pledge ledger had been sitting minutes earlier between 2 cream envelopes and a silver pen. But Priscilla Grant treated it like a crime scene. "Stop the procession," she repeated into her headset. "No one enters the garden until I clear it." Staff members paused with trays in their hands. The string musicians outside lowered their bows. Beyond the service gate, guests kept turning their heads, trying to understand why the perfect wedding had suddenly lost its rhythm. Tessa Reed stood closest to the table. Her face had gone pale. "It was there," she said. "I checked it before the West Garden set up. It was right there." Priscilla turned slowly. "You checked it?" "Yes, ma'am, like you asked." "And now it's gone." Tessa opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Marjorie stepped beside Eliana, close enough that the scent of her perfume felt sharp. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. The one morning we need dignity, and we are standing in a service corridor with missing documents." Eliana looked at the empty space on the table. "No one has proven anything." "Proof?" Marjorie asked. "Sometimes common sense arrives before proof." Adrian stood beside the bicycle, one hand resting lightly near the brass bell. He had not moved toward the table. He had not touched the envelopes. He had not raised his voice. That calm made Priscilla angrier. "Mr. Vale," she said, "why were you in this corridor?" "Because you sent me here." "For the bicycle." "Not for the coordination table. I didn't go near the ledger." "You expect me to accept that?" "I expect you to check who did," A few staff members looked up. Adrian glanced at the door behind the table, then at the small black camera tucked in the corner of the ceiling. Who had access to the coordination room after the ledger was placed here? Who turned off the scanner alert at the service gate? Who checked the camera before stopping the ceremony? Priscilla's smile returned, but it had no warmth in it.
This is not your department. It's my wedding. It is a Royal Crest event, she said, and at Royal Crest, we follow procedure. Tessa's fingers tightened around her tablet. For a second, she looked as if she might speak. Priscilla saw it. Tessa, she said, soft and dangerous. I would choose my next sentence very carefully. Tessa looked down. Mr. Joseph Bell rose slowly from the folding chair, one hand on his violin case. Ma'am, he said, that ledger is not just paper. If it is the same pledge I was told about, it concerns shuttle support for older guests, people who were promised they would not be left outside. Priscilla turned on him. Mr. Bell, your performance status is also being reviewed. I was invited to play the opening piece. You were not cleared at the correct entrance. Eliana stepped forward. He's been waiting respectfully this whole time. And he is adding confusion to a compromised event, Priscilla said. Escort Mr. Bell outside until we confirm his credentials. The old musician's shoulders lowered, but he did not argue. The quiet dignity of it made Eliana's throat tighten. No, she said. Marjorie caught her arm. Eliana. No, Eliana repeated, pulling free. You don't get to throw people out and call it elegance. Some guests had drifted closer to the open gate. Not enough to understand everything, but enough to see Mr. Joseph being asked to leave and Tessa standing under accusation. Marjorie's face hardened. If your groom's presence has caused this, let Priscilla fix it before your entire marriage begins as a public apology. Adrian finally looked at her. My presence didn't make the ledger disappear. Marjorie met his eyes. People like you always say that after something valuable goes missing. Eliana turned toward her aunt. Do not say that. Someone has to protect this family. No, Eliana said, her voice shaking but clear. Someone has to protect the truth. Priscilla picked up a folder from beneath the table and opened it with a snap. Then let's protect it properly. She pulled out 2 forms and placed them on a clipboard. Incident reports. One for unauthorized access to a restricted corridor. One for negligent handling of event materials. Tessa stared at the forms. Negligent handling? I didn't. You were assigned near the coordination table, Priscilla said. You admit you checked the ledger, and you have been carrying an unauthorized tablet all morning. It's my work tablet. It is not on my device list. Adrian stepped slightly in front of Tessa without making it look like a challenge. You're asking her to sign responsibility for something you haven't investigated. I am documenting a disruption. You're assigning blame. Priscilla turned to him. And you will sign here, confirming that you entered a staff-only corridor and interfered with event operations. Eliana looked at the paper, then at Adrian. No. If they refuse, Priscilla said, I will contact security and request law enforcement support. I will also recommend postponing the ceremony due to an unresolved theft concern. The word theft landed hard. Tessa's eyes filled, but she blinked it back. Around her, staff members suddenly found reasons to look at their shoes. Priscilla took a stack of loose schedules from the table and let them slide from her hand. The paper scattered across the polished floor. Tessa, she said,
pick those up.
Since you are so familiar with this area, you can begin by restoring order. For a heartbeat, Tessa did not move. Then she bent down, not because she was guilty, because she was afraid. Eliana stepped toward her, but Adrian raised one hand gently, not to stop Eliana from helping, to make sure everyone saw what Priscilla had chosen to do. Across the corridor, an attendant touched Mr. Joseph's elbow and guided him toward the side gate. The old man clutched his violin case, as if it were the last piece of himself he was allowed to keep.
He looked once at the faded words on the wall. No guest left outside. Then he looked at the brass bell on Adrian's bicycle. Adrian's face changed. Not loudly, not dramatically. Something in him simply stopped waiting. "Enough," he said. The word was quiet, but it carried farther than Priscilla expected. She turned. "I beg your pardon?" Adrian stepped to the bicycle and placed his hand on the brass bell. No one leaves this corridor until the camera footage and access logs are opened. Priscilla gave a short laugh.
And what authority do you think you have to demand that? Adrian looked at Tessa. She was still crouched near the papers, one hand on the floor, the other on her tablet. "Tessa," he said, "open the backup." Priscilla's expression shifted for the first time. "What backup?" Tessa looked from Adrian to Priscilla. Her hand trembled as she woke the tablet. On the screen, beneath the reflection of the corridor lights, a folder appeared. Royal Crest Complaint Archive. Do not delete. Priscilla stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper.
"You have no idea what you are touching." Adrian kept his hand on the bell. "I know exactly what she is touching." Tessa's thumb hovered over the folder for one breath too long. Priscilla saw the hesitation and reached for the tablet. Eliana stepped between them, her wedding dress brushing the scattered schedules on the floor. "Don't touch her." Priscilla stopped because staff and several guests were now watching through the service gate. "This is internal property," Priscilla said. "A temporary employee has no right to display unverified files during a private event." Tessa's voice was thin. "They're not unverified." She opened the folder. The screen filled with dated complaints. An elderly guest left waiting at the side gate because his shoes did not meet photo standards. A seasonal server removed from the front garden after a VIP said her uniform looked too ordinary. A wheelchair shuttle request delayed until after portraits. A musician redirected to deliveries because his case looked worn. Eliana read one line and felt her anger go cold. "This happened here?" Priscilla lifted her chin. "Anyone can write complaints. That does not make them facts." Tessa tapped another file. These are the emails attached to them. A message opened with Priscilla's name at the top. "Ignore until after VIP season. Revisit if ratings drop." The corridor went still in smaller ways. A waiter lowered his tray. A guest moved closer. A staff member covered the name on her badge as if it could protect her. Priscilla's face tightened. "That email is being taken out of context." "Then open the access log," Adrian said. "Only management can authorize that." "Then authorize it." "You are not management." Adrian looked at the brass bell under his hand. "Run the scanner again." Priscilla laughed once, sharp and nervous. "We are not turning this into another bicycle performance." But Tessa connected the tablet to the old scanner dock beside the service door. Adrian lifted the handlebar just enough for the brass bell to pass near the dock. The scanner beeped. Founder override. This time, people saw it. A low murmur moved through the corridor. Mr. Joseph Bell stepped forward from near the gate, one hand still on his violin case. "That sound," he said softly. "I heard it on the first morning Royal Crest opened." Adrian did not interrupt him. Mr. Joseph looked at the engraving. VM001. She rang it herself. Mrs. Vale. She said a place built for celebration had no right to make good people enter like shame was part of the dress code. Priscilla cut in. "That is sentimental history, not evidence." "No," Adrian said. "The evidence is next." Tessa opened the access log. The ledger had been marked present at 8:52 a.m. The coordination room door had opened at 9:18. The user ID belonged to Priscilla Grant. Priscilla stepped back. "I manage this event. I enter that room all morning." Tessa tapped the camera file. The footage was silent. It showed the coordination table, the founder pledge ledger, and Priscilla entering alone. She looked toward the hall, picked up the ledger, and carried it to the linen cabinet beside the service wall. There was no confusion in the video, no temporary storage, only a woman hiding what she later claimed had been stolen. Priscilla's first words failed her. Then she found a new version of herself. I moved it to protect it." The corridor was crowded. "You let Tessa bend on the floor and pick up your papers while you knew where it was," Eliana said. Priscilla looked away. Marjorie had gone quiet. Too quiet. Adrian saw her stepping backward toward the garden entrance, phone already in her hand. "Marjorie," Eliana said. Her aunt stopped. "I am calling the investors before this becomes a public misunderstanding." A young attendant near the linen carts looked up. "Ma'am, you already called earlier." Marjorie's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" The attendant's voice shook. "You told Ms. Grant the bicycle groom needed to disappear before the investor group arrived. You said the photos would ruin the charity announcement." "That is not what I meant." Tessa tapped another file. Marjorie's voice came through the tablet, clipped and impatient. "Make the bicycle groom disappear before the investors arrive. I don't care if he stands behind a hedge, a delivery wall, or a closed gate." No one needed to repeat it. Before either woman could recover, a man in a dark suit stepped in from the administrative hall. He had been near the estate office since morning, quiet enough that most guests had mistaken him for another consultant. He carried a leather folder with the Vale Motion seal. Priscilla's face changed again. "You're from the board office." "Yes," he said. "I'm here for the operating contract review." Marjorie softened instantly. "Then perhaps you can help us clear up this unfortunate confusion?" The board liaison did not look at her. He looked at Adrian. "Mr. Vale," he said, "the audit team is ready whenever you are." Priscilla stared at Adrian. "Mr. Vale?" Adrian let go of the bell and stood straighter. Not taller, just finished pretending silence could protect everyone. The board liaison opened the folder. "For the record, Royal Crest Wedding Estate is owned by Vale Motion Holdings. Adrian Vale holds founder access, ownership authority, and final review rights over today's operational audit." Someone near the gate whispered, "Vale Motion?" Priscilla's eyes dropped to the bicycle. Mr. Joseph looked at Adrian with tears shining, but not falling. Adrian did not smile. He did not enjoy it. "The ledger was never the real problem," he said. "The problem is that Royal Crest learned how to polish marble and forgot how to open a door." No one answered. He looked at Priscilla. "You called it image control. You buried complaints, pushed older guests to side entrances, pressured seasonal staff, and blamed a woman you thought could not fight back. Priscilla's voice came out small. I was protecting the premium standard. You were protecting yourself. Then Adrian looked at Marjorie. And you were willing to make Eliana's wedding smaller than your pride. Marjorie's face flushed. Adrian, I didn't know who you were. Eliana stepped beside him. That is the problem. You only want to apologize because now you do. The board liaison turned to Priscilla. Effective immediately, your control of this event is suspended pending independent review. The complaint archive is to be preserved. No files are to be deleted, moved, or edited. Tessa's grip on the tablet loosened. Adrian looked at her. You are not being suspended. You are being protected. Tessa nodded once, too overwhelmed to speak. At the side gate, Mr. Joseph still waited outside. Adrian turned toward the closed marble entrance beyond the corridor. Open the front gate, he said. Bring Mr. Bell back to the garden. Priscilla looked as if she wanted to object, but there was no role left for her to play. Marjorie's voice came quieter now. Are you canceling the wedding? Adrian looked at Eliana. Then he looked at the gate that had been closed to the people Royal Crest was built to welcome. No, he said. But it continues only when the people pushed outside are invited in first. For a moment after Adrian spoke, no one moved. The front gate was still closed. The garden still waited beneath the glass roof, as if beauty had not just been interrupted by the truth. Then the board liaison turned to the staff near the corridor. Open the main entrance, he said. Preserve every file connected to the complaint archive. No one deletes, edits, moves, or renames anything. Priscilla Grant stood beside the coordination table with her headset still on, but no one was listening to her anymore. A young supervisor quietly took the tablet from her hand. Miss Grant, the liaison said, you are relieved of event control, pending independent review. Priscilla looked at the staff she had trained to fear her. No one clapped. The Founder Pledge Ledger was brought out of the linen cabinet. Its leather cover was creased, but the pages were intact. A staff member placed it back on the coordination table. Adrian looked at it without touching it. A promise written down is easy, he said. The hard part is living like it matters. Tessa stood near the wall, still holding her tablet, as if someone might take it from her again. You are protected, the liaison told her. Whistleblower status will be documented today. You will not sign that incident report. You will not be disciplined for preserving evidence. Tessa pressed one hand to her mouth. Adrian turned to her. After the ceremony, I'd like you on the guest dignity audit team. Not as punishment, because you saw the truth before the rest of us wanted to. Tessa nodded, tears bright in her eyes. Yes, sir. Adrian, he said gently. Today, just Adrian. Near the corridor entrance, Marjorie Brooks looked smaller. She stepped toward Adrian. I owe you an apology. Eliana moved before he could answer. No, she said. You owe Tessa an apology. And Mr. Bell, and every person you thought could be moved behind a wall because they made the photos harder to explain. Marjorie swallowed. The board liaison glanced at his folder. Mrs. Brooks, the charity committee will be informed that you attempted to influence event staff during a protected audit. Your authority to represent the Brooks family in Royal Crest partnerships is suspended, pending review. Marjorie looked at Eliana, waiting for her niece to soften the blow. Eliana did not. I am still your family, she said, but I am not your project anymore. Outside, the marble gate began to open. The sound rolled through the corridor. Mr. Joseph Bell stood on the other side with his violin case in both hands. For a second, he did not step forward. Then Adrian walked to him. "Mr. Bell," he said, "would you lead us in through the front?" The old musician looked at the bicycle. The brass bell caught the light beside Adrian's hand. "I knew your mother," Mr. Joseph said, quietly. "She rang that bell the first morning this place opened. She said no door was grand enough if it made good people feel small." Adrian's eyes lowered. "I was afraid we had forgotten her." "No," Mr. Joseph said. "You remembered, before it was too late." Eliana slipped her hand into Adrian's. He looked at her as the woman who had stood beside him before the truth could protect her. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't hide this to test you, but I still let you stand in pressure I should have shared." Eliana held his hand tighter. "I stood with you because you saw people others tried not to see," she said. "But after today, you don't carry hard truths alone. Not if I'm your wife." For the first time that morning, Adrian smiled without sadness behind it. "No," he said, "not alone." The wedding did not continue the way Marjorie had planned it. There was no perfect procession, no staged entrance for the cameras. The guests stepped aside as Mr. Joseph walked through the front gate first, violin case in hand, shoes old but polished, back straight. Behind him came Tessa, then the seasonal staff who had been told to stay invisible, then the older guests who had waited too long near side entrances. They were called by name. When Mr. Joseph reached the garden, he opened his violin case. The first note he played was soft enough that some guests leaned forward to hear it. Adrian closed his eyes. It was his mother's song. Eliana stood beside the same man who had handed water to an old musician before anyone knew his name. That was the man she married. Later, when the vows were done and the crowd had thinned, Adrian did not leave in a limousine. He and Eliana walked back to the front gate with the old bicycle. Mr. Joseph stood beside the open entrance, one hand near the brass bell. "May I?" he asked. Adrian nodded. Mr. Joseph rang the bell once. The sound was small, bright, and clear. This time, no one laughed. By late afternoon, the brass bell from VM001 had been placed in a glass frame beside the main entrance. Under it, a new bronze sign had been mounted. Proud. Every guest enters through the front door. Tessa was the one who opened the gate for the next arrival, an elderly woman stepping from a shuttle van. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Whitaker," Tessa said, smiling. "We're glad you're here." The woman looked surprised to be called by name. Then she walked through the front gate without lowering her head. Adrian and Eliana watched from the path, their hands still joined, the old bicycle leaning quietly beside them. Royal Crest had not become grander that day. It had become worthy of its gate. If this story touched your heart, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. And if you believe every person deserves dignity, no matter how they look, like this video, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs the reminder. This is an original fictional story created for entertainment and moral reflection. Any resemblance to real people, companies, institutions, or events is purely coincidental.